Hello everyone. So this session is about capital budgeting. What is capital budgeting? It's selecting long-term projects and seeing if they're viable and if they maximize a shareholder's wealth by comparing them. So for example, let's say you have two projects. You need to know whether these two projects are independent or mutually exclusive, okay? If they are independent, that could mean you could choose both projects if they are both viable, both are profitable, both meet the parameters of your organization. If they are mutually exclusive, that means you have to choose one or the other. So think of it this way, the word exclusive, try to say exclusion of something. So you have to take one, you exclude another one. Try to remember it that way. So two projects, if they are independent, your answer will change whether they are independent or if they are mutually exclusive. If they are independent, you could choose both. If it meets the parameter. Another terminology for you is the difference between capital expenditure and operating expenditure. Capital expenditure is any expenditure that is longer than a year, while operating expenditure are usually short term and less than a year. Two ways of evaluating projects. Either you accept or reject. There's the accept or reject approach or the ranking approach. The accept or reject, it either meets the criteria or it doesn't meet. You either accept or reject a project. In ranking, you would rank them from the most profitable to the least profitable. So remember, two ways of evaluating projects. Either the accept or reject approach or the ranking approach. There are three ways to calculate capital budgeting projects. First one is called the payback period. The second one is called the NPV method. The third one is called IRR. Let's start some calculations. Okay, so let's start by looking at the payback period. Now, let's say that we had an initial investment in the project, in both projects at 10,000. And these were the cash flows from year 1 to 4 for ABC and year 1 to 4 for XYZ. I need to know in what year I'm getting my money back. So for ABC, the first year I get 5,000 back. So how much remains from the 10,000? Another 5,000. So by the end of year 2, I'm getting my 10,000 back, okay? So the payback period for ABC is 2 years, okay? That is the payback period because I'm receiving all the money I need back in 2 years, okay? My 10K. Now, for XYZ, in the first year, I'm getting 3,000. So how much remains? 10 minus 3, 7,000. In year 2, I'm getting 5,000. So how much remains at the end of year 2? 2,000, right? So let's do that again. 10 minus 3, my initial investment of 10, I get back 3,000 the first year. So 10,000 of my initial investment remains. In year 2, I get 5,000. So 2,000 from my initial investment remains. And then I come to year 3, I receive 7,000, but I only need 2 to get my payback, okay? So I know that my payback period falls between years 2 and 3. It falls somewhere in here because I only need 2,000, but I actually get 7. So where does it fall? I will divide 2,000 by 7,000. So 2,000 divided by 7,000, and you get that it's 0.29. Okay, so now I know that my payback period, it's 2 plus 0.29 years. So 2.29 years. Okay, so this is how I will calculate the payback period. Now, if the projects are independent, okay, and the company requires a payback period of 2 years. Okay, let's say the management decided the payback period is 2 years. I will only accept ABC. Okay, I will reject XYZ because it's more than 2 years. However, if the company wants a payback period of 3 years, now I have both of them that meet the payback period. So I have to look. Are they independent or mutually exclusive? If they are independent, I can choose both because both meet the criteria. If they are mutually exclusive, then I will choose the one that I get my money back faster, which is ABC. Okay, again, if they are independent, they both meet the criteria 3, so I will choose both if they are independent. If they are mutually exclusive, then I will choose only the one that gives me my money back faster. Now, the benefit of the payback period is that it's simple, it's easy, it's fast to calculate. The disadvantage of the payback period is that it ignores the time value of money. It ignores the cash flows after the payback period, which I can see in this case, I get more from this project than I will get from this project, yet I'm accepting this, okay? If you can see, the cash flows after the payback period are more for this project than this one. Yet I'm accepting this one because I'm getting my money faster. So this is a disadvantage of the payback period, okay? So keep that in mind as well. Okay, everyone, so net present value, known as NPV, is basically all the future cash flows discounted at a discount rate, a required rate of return, over how many numbers of period. Don't be intimidated by the sign. This just means the sum of, okay? So basically, if you have t equals 1, starting at 1 year, then it would be to the power of 1. Well, cash flow in year 2 will be to the power of 2, and so forth. And then you would add them. You would discount and add them. Then you would subtract the initial investment or the initial cash flow at time 0, okay? So this basically is the present value of the future cash flows discounted, because it's a present value, so you're going to discount them. Then you're going to subtract the initial investment. This formula should remind you of the PV formula. It's exactly the same. So PV, if you remember, was FV over 1 plus R to the T. So future cash flows are FV's future values discounted. So this is exactly the same formula, calculated exactly the same way. Just add them together. So this is the sum of, you add them together, and then you will subtract your initial investment. Let's do a calculation. So we have this project. The initial investment is going to cost us 42,000 dinars. These are all in BHD. In year 1, the project will make 10,000. In year 2, it will make 30,000. And in year 3, it will make 20,000. So I would suggest that the first thing you do is put them on a timeline. This will show you visually where the cash flows are placed. So in year 1, 10,000. In year 2, 30,000. And in year 3, 20,000. Okay? Now, remember the formula says we need to discount it. If you want to remember the formula again, it's the present value equals the future value over 1 plus R to the T. Or if you don't want to confuse yourselves, cash flow to the T over 1 plus R to the T. Okay? They are the same formula. The cash flow here, or the future value here, in year 1 is 10,000. So I will discount it. The rate of return I was given as 10%. So 1 plus 10%, since it's sitting under year 1, it's to the 1. In year 2, I will discount it. How many periods? 2. So to the power of 2. In year 3, I will discount it. How many times? 3, because it's the year 3. Okay? Now, I will discount these to the present and then add them. I suggest you pause the video, do the calculations, and come back. Now, if you did the calculations, you should have found that the 10,000 discounted will be about 9,000. The 30,000 discounted is about 25,000. Okay, the actual should have been 24,793, but this is a fast example I'm doing here. So rounding up, it's 25, and the 20,000 would be about 15,000. So what do I do now? The next step, I add them. Remember in that formula, it said the sum of the sum of all the future cash flows, so I need to add them. When I add these three cash flows, I'm going to get about 49,000. Okay? So last step, remember what was it? Minus the initial investment or cash flow at time 0, which is 42,000. So minus 42,000. What are you going to get? The answer is 7,000. BD. Okay? Now, what does this mean? If your NPV, this is the NPV now, okay? So this is your answer. This is NPV, 7,000. If it is positive, you will accept the project. If it is negative, you will reject the project. Okay? Why? Because if it's positive, means you're receiving your required rate of return and more. If it is negative, means you're not getting your required rate of return and it's costing you more than you're going to get out of this project. So again, if your NPV is positive, you will accept the project. If it is negative, you will reject the project. Now, if, for example, you were doing two projects and both were positive, if they were independent, you would accept both projects. If both projects are positive and they are mutually exclusive, then you have to choose one, right? So you would choose the one with the higher NPV. Okay? So the third technique that we have is the internal rate of return, the IRR. The IRR is a criteria that we decide based on it whether to accept or reject a project, depending on its comparison with the required rate of return. Okay? So the criteria for it is that we need to know if the IRR is greater than or less than the required rate of return. However, what is IRR? IRR is basically what this project is returning, and therefore it's when NPV equals 0. So what is this R that will make NPV 0? Which means I'm getting the return that I want. What is this number that will make this 0? So what is this number that's going to make the future cash flows equal to the initial investment? Okay? Again, what is the R that when I discount the future cash flows, it's going to equal my initial investment? So the future cash flows, the future discounted cash flows equal the initial investment. When they are equal, this formula, this answer becomes 0. Okay? So this is the discount rate that's going to make NPV equal to 0, and that is IRR. That is the rate. Okay? Now, if you have an NPV that is positive, I know that the IRR is greater than the R. I'm getting more from this project than what I require, and therefore I will accept. If the IRR is less than the R, then the NPV is negative and I am not receiving the required rate of return or what I require from this project. Okay, let's do a numerical example. So if, for example, you are told that a project's IRR is 20% and your required rate of return is 10%. In this event, you will accept because your IRR is higher than what you require. You're getting 20, while the project requests or you require 10 only. Okay, so this, in this case, you will accept. Now, still, if your required rate of return is 10, but a project is giving you 8, the IRR is 8. In this case, you will reject because it's less than what you require. Okay, so let's say your requirement is 10%. You receive 20 when you calculate IRR. You will accept. If you get IRR to be 8, you will reject because it's less than 10%. That's all.